How do we periodise? In 1817, James Mill, a Scottish economist and political philosopher, published a massive 3-volume work, A History of British India. In this he divided Indian history into 3 periods: Hindu, Muslim and British. This periodization came to be widely accepted. Can you think of any problem with this way of looking at Indian history? Why do we try and divide history into different periods? We do so in an attempt to capture the characteristics of a time, its central features as they appear to us. So the terms through which we periodize, that is, demarcate the difference between periods, become important. They reflect our ideas about the past. They show how we see the significance of the change from one period to the next. Mill thought that all Asian societies were at a lower level of civilization than Europe. According to his telling of history, before the British came to India, Hindu and Muslim despots ruled the country. Religious intolerance, caste taboos, and superstitious practices dominated social life. British rule, Mill felt, could civilize India. To do this, it was necessary to introduce European manners, arts, institutions, and laws in India. Mill, in fact, suggested that the British should conquer all the territories in India to ensure the enlightenment and happiness of the Indian people. For India was not capable of progress without British help. In this idea of history, British rule represented all the forces of progress and civilization. The period before British rule was one of darkness. Can such a conception be accepted today? In any case, can we refer to any period of history as Hindu or Muslim? Did not a variety of faiths exist simultaneously in these periods? Why should we characterize an age only through the religion of the rulers of the time? To do so is to suggest that the lives and practices of the others do not really matter. We should also remember that even rulers in ancient India did not all share the same faith. Moving away from British classification, historians have usually divided Indian history into ancient, medieval, and modern. This division too has its problems. It is a periodization that is borrowed from the West, where the modern period was associated with the growth of all the forces of modernity, science, reason, democracy, liberty, and equality. Medieval was a term used to describe a society where these features of modern society did not exist. Can we uncritically accept this characterization of the modern period to describe the period of our study? As you will see in this book, under British rule, people did not have equality, freedom, or liberty. Nor was the period one of economic growth and progress. Many historians, therefore, refer to this period as colonial. What is colonial? In this book, you will read about the way the British came to conquer the country and establish their rule, subjugating local nawabs and rajas. You will see how they established control over the economy and society, collected revenue to meet all their expenses, bought the goods they wanted at low prices, produced crops they needed for export, and you will understand the changes that came about as a consequence. You will also come to know about the changes British rule brought about in values and tastes, customs and practices. When the subjugation of one country by another leads to these kinds of political, economic, social and cultural changes, we refer to the process as colonization. You will, however, find that all classes and groups did not experience these changes in the same way. That is why the book is called Our Pasts in the plural. How do we know? What sources do historians use in writing about the last 250 years of Indian history? Administration produces records. One important source is the official records of the British administration. The British believed that the act of writing was important. Every instruction, plan, policy decision, agreement, investigation had to be clearly written up. Once this was done, things could be properly studied and debated. This conviction produced an administrative culture of memos, notings, and reports. The British also felt that all important documents and letters needed to be carefully preserved. So they set up record rooms attached to all administrative institutions. The village Tehsildar's office, the collectorate, the commissioner's office, the provincial secretariats, the law courts, all had their record rooms. Specialized institutions like archives and museums were also established to preserve important records. Letters and memos that moved from one branch of the administration to another in the early years of the 19th century can still be read in the archives. You can also study the notes and reports that district officials prepared or the instructions and directives that were sent by officials at the top to provincial administrators. In the early years of the 19th century, these documents were carefully copied out and beautifully written by calligraphists, that is, by those who specialized in the art of beautiful writing. By the middle of the 19th century, with the spread of printing, multiple copies of these records were printed as proceedings of each government department. Source 1. Reports to the Home Department. In 1946, the colonial government in India was trying to put down a mutiny that broke out on the ships of the Royal Indian Navy. Here is a sample of the kind of reports the Home Department got from the different dockyards. Bombay. Arrangements have been made for the army to take over ships and establishment. Royal Navy ships are remaining outside the harbour. Karachi. 301 mutineers are under arrest and a few more strongly suspected are to be arrested. All establishments are under military guard. Visakhapatnam. The position is completely under control and no violence has occurred. Military guards have been placed on ships and establishments. No further trouble is expected, except that a few men may refuse to work. Surveys become important. The practice of surveying also became common under the colonial administration. The British believed that a country had to be properly known before it could be effectively administered. By the early 19th century, detailed surveys were being carried out to map the entire country. In the villages, revenue surveys were conducted. The effort was to know the topography, the soil quality, the flora, the fauna, the local histories, and the cropping pattern, all the facts seen as necessary to know about to administer the region. From the end of the 19th century, census operations were held every 10 years. These prepared detailed records of the number of people in all the provinces of India, noting information on castes, religions, and occupation. There were many other surveys: botanical surveys, zoological surveys, archaeological surveys, anthropological surveys, forest survey. What official records do not tell? From this vast corpus of records, we can get to know a lot. But we must remember that these are official records. They tell us what the officials thought, what they were interested in, and what they wished to preserve for posterity. These records do not always help us understand what other people in the country felt and what lay behind their actions. For that we need to look elsewhere. When we begin to search for these other sources, we find them in plenty, though they are more difficult to get than official records. We have diaries of people, accounts of pilgrims and travelers, autobiographies of important personalities, and popular booklets that were sold in the local bazaars. As printing spread, newspapers were published and issues were debated in public. Leaders and reformers wrote to spread their ideas. Poets and novelists wrote to express their feelings. All these sources, however, were produced by those who were literate. From these, we will not be able to understand how history was experienced and lived by the tribals and the peasants, the workers in the mines, or the poor on the streets. Getting to know their lives is a more difficult task. Yet, this can be done if we make a little bit of effort. When you read this book, you will see how this can be done. Not fit for human consumption. Newspapers provide accounts of the movements in different parts of the country. Here is a report of a police strike in 1946. More than 2,000 policemen in Delhi refused to take their food on Thursday morning as a protest against their low salaries and the bad quality of food supplied to them in the police line's kitchen. As the news spread to the other police stations, the men there also refused to take food. One of the strikers said, "The food supplied to us from the police line's kitchen is not fit for human consumption. Even cattle would not eat the chapatis and dal which we have to eat." Subscribe to my channel. Click on bell icon to get notification about new video.